Trying to keep us on task.
Yes, you do a good job of making sure I don't forget things. Okie dokie. Welcome everyone to the Madison admin group for March. Today we're going to be doing our little introduction like we always do, and then we'll jump right into our main event where we'll be talking business analysis and SMS/text messaging with Eric Dreshfield. Okay, why is my slide not progressing? There we go. So those of you who are new, I'm one of the co-leaders of the Madison side for the user group. Jem Bowen, who's over there waving, is the other co-leader. We basically take care of the Madison side. We have been working together with the Milwaukee group. We have acted like one user group, essentially. And the two folks over there are Squire Kirchner and Jen Kant. Jen has announced recently that she's going to be planning on stepping down as a co-leader for the Milwaukee side. So if there's any Milwaukee folks out there who are interested in potentially co-leading the group with Squire, reach out to Squire. But you can find us at our email address up there, and of course on Twitter, and probably the best place is the Trailblazer community group that we have. So why are we all here? Mainly to have a Zoom meeting, so it's something else other than what we usually do for work. But it's all about networking. We want to help each other out. We want to get to know each other. So this is a safe space. There is nothing like a wrong opinion. We all want to learn from each other because we've all learned things the hard way, and we all have some good stories to share, and we've learned some best practices, and we all succeed when we help everyone else succeed around us. Okay, we do this every meeting. We want to hear from you. We would like our own community members to present. There's nothing too simple. There is nothing that it can be possibly negative to be a story to share. It doesn't have to be an hour-long presentation. It could be 15 minutes. Things that you could do could be things that you learn when you're coming into being an administrator, or something you learned recently. Because Salesforce has gotten so huge, I will guarantee you someone in this group would not have known about it, even if you think it's something really, really basic. Doing those types of topics are always good, and having it as a real life use case is even better. Project successes are always great, but so are failures. Sometimes we learn more from when we fail than when we succeed, and sharing our failures is one of the ways to help other people learn from our own failure, therefore making that failure a success. So please, if you have something you think, hey, I got a 10-15 minute story about something I learned or something I would want to share, please reach out to Jen and I. We would love to talk to you and have you come and do a little ditty on one of our meetings. Okay, we have lots of community groups in the area, and it seems to be growing as we go on. We have folks in Madison, Milwaukee, including a developer group, administrator group, a women in tech group, a marketing group. There's groups in Green Bay, Appleton, and Neenah. And then, of course, we have Salesforce Saturdays in Milwaukee and Madison. And I'm going to pick on Andy. Andy, what's Salesforce Saturday?
He might not be paying
And you got to make me find that window. Well, I don't really know, since we've been on hiatus for like 2 years now, but generally Salesforce Saturday is a time for you to come together with other community members and just kind of work on whatever kind of projects you'd like to work on, things you'd like to learn about with Salesforce kind of on your own, and just ask questions to the group.
And typically that takes place on Saturday, hence the name Salesforce Saturday.
Actually, we've been like Thursday mornings. No, I'm just kidding. You're right. Saturday.
We tried it on Sunday. It just didn't work. It didn't sound right.
We also don't discuss Salesforce.
It's really all about chocolate chip cookies.
Or killer bread.
Upcoming events, we have Trailhead, which I believe has been rebranded to be Trailblazer DX. If I saw the message correct. That's coming up in April in San Francisco, as well as remote. Along the exact same time, we have Northeast Streaming and Texas Streaming, if you would rather attend one of those. And then we have Southeast Dreaming coming up in June, as well as Dreaming in Color, which is over in North Carolina, and Forcelandia up in Oregon. And then we have something called Midwest Dreaming near the end of July. That's in Minneapolis this year. Eric, I know you have a little involvement with Midwest Streaming. Anything you want to add to that?
Just a little involvement. I actually have a shameless plug for it in my slide later, in my deck later, so we'll save it.
There's nothing. There are tons of community events, and there is a community calendar that will have like all the Dreaming events, including the events from Salesforce. So that's always a place to check out if you're looking to potentially do an event. So we also like to use this opportunity to kind of announce new certifications, new jobs people have started. Anyone's looking to hire someone, they can share that here as well. Does anyone have anything they want to announce or share?
I started working with Jen and Aubrey at Sarity Partners about a month ago, and it's been a wonderful experience. So thank you. And I found out about that here, so that was good too.
Wow, the system works.
It works. It works.
And even better, what else did you get shortly after joining our team that's hanging on your wall back there?
Oh, I got certified platform app builder.
Woo!
Nice. Woo.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Me too. It's great.
Anyone else have anything they would like to share?
I just found out the other day I get to meet a new coworker on Monday named Marvin, is all I know. But he's a Salesforce architect from out east who is giving us a year in our national nonprofit for helping us figure out the basically solutioning for a student data model. We've only ever tracked people once they graduate, and so backing that up into the undergrad days. But really grateful to have somebody much more experienced than I am coming on.
John, we're going to be really excited to hear that presentation.
Once we crack the nut, we'll share it.
Anyone else? Okay, so at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Eric Dreshfield, who is a product evangelist over at Mogli. I've known Eric, I don't know, over a decade
Forever.
now, forever. He's been in the Salesforce environment forever. I'll let him do his own intro because he's probably has a better memory than I. I basically associate him with bacon. So with that, Eric,
All right.
over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you everyone for joining today. Let me get my screen in the right place, and I will do a little screen share here. I don't know if you had a particular order, but I'm going to do the Mogli thing first because it's the shorter presentation, just to get that one out of the way. So let's see. Hopefully that's the right thing. There we go. I assume you all are seeing a screen of mine now, right?
Yeah.
All right. I see a thumbs up. Very cool. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, like I said, for joining today. I appreciate the opportunity to come out here and virtually meet you and talk to you as well. The first topic that I want to kind of talk about is Mogli, and they're a native to Salesforce SMS text messaging app. Got to get in the right spot. A little bit about Mogli. We're a Salesforce ISV partner. We're a partner with .org. We are a member of the Pledge 1% program as well. And there's me, my contact info, my email, my cell phone. Feel free to jot them down if you want. You can find me all over the place too, like Twitter and the Trailblazer community as well. I think I'm the only Eric Dreshfield that exists in any of those, although maybe in the community there's 12 or 13 of me, just based on how community profiles go sometimes. Anyway, you know what, Brian, I don't think I actually have a slide in here that talks about my background. maybe that's in the other deck. I don't remember. But like Brian said, I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem quite a long time. It was 2009 when I first logged into Salesforce. Started out on the customer side, about 5 years or so on the customer side, working for 2 different organizations, helping them implement Sales and Service Cloud, and then taking on a business analytics kind of reporting role for those organizations. And at that point in 2016, flipped over to start working on the partner side of Salesforce. And since have worked primarily on the ISV side with 3 or 4 different ISVs and 1 small SI, typically in a marketing role. From a Salesforce perspective, I'm kind of an end user rather than anything else now, which is fine with what I like to do. So anyway, so let's dive deep into Mogli. I guess I shouldn't say deep. There's 3 or 4 slides, and then I'll do maybe a 5-minute demo of Mogli, and we'll move on from that. So how did Mogli get started? That's the interesting part. I think I love telling this story. The founder of Mogli was working with an organization called Nuru International, trying to help rural farmers in Kenya to figure out ways to better protect their crops from crop disease and weather issues and things of that nature. And this was in late 2011, early 2012. These farmers were literally living in mud huts. They had very little access to any modern convenience. They had access to enough electricity to charge flip phones, and that was their communication tool, was a flip phone, a cell phone. So Mogli built initially a one-way text messaging app where Nuru International could push messages out to these farmers to tell them about crop disease in their area or weather or anything that would help them better protect their crops and create better yields, basically to try to end hunger 1 farm at a time. That was kind of their mission, was what can we do to help these farmers produce better farms, create better yield, and get people less hungry. Since that time, Mogli has developed into a super robust, really full-featured 2-way app. You can do one-on-one conversations with any individual that you have the numbers with, provided you get an opt-in first. You can do bulk messaging with groups of people, anywhere up to several thousand people at one time, still because of the way it's built through some of the things I'll show you in a little bit. Even if you're sending a bulk message out to 30,000 people, it can still be personalized based on the data that's in your Salesforce org. So people will think you're talking directly to them instead of 1 in a million or 1 in 3,000 or however many. Some of our clients also use Mogli for scheduled reminders for notifications. And we have a chatbot-like feature where you can do automated conversations as well. So why text messaging? Why not email? I mean, basically everybody has a phone. I mean, look at your desk. Probably some of you might have 2 phones on your desk even. I used to be guilty of carrying 2 cell phones when I worked at a different company. But in the US, at least 97 to 98% of all people that have a cell phone use a text messaging app at least once a day. And even going back several years, I remember another study that was looking specifically at the college student market. And I believe this was a study from 2014. That study determined that college students back then were spending approximately 90 minutes a day on their phone with doing text messaging. And fast forward to today, 8 years later, that's probably 4 hours, I would guess, maybe longer. There's probably a lot of texting going on when the students should be paying attention in class. But that's just the nature of kids sometimes. So really, why text messaging over email? Basically, text messages have a 98% open rate and a 45% response rate. And most of the times those text messages are opened and responded to within anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 to 5 minutes. So very engaging, very quick responses. And the performance of those over email is roughly 7 times better than your traditional email campaigns. So like I said earlier, these are just some examples of how our clients use Mogli. One-to-one conversations, bulk messaging. You can do segments within your messaging and only hit certain people, or modify the message depending on what group those individuals are part of. We have a great product or a great application on this where you can use Mogli for surveys to get feedback on an event or a meeting or anything of those nature as well. And then we also have a partnership with an organization called IATS, which allows nonprofit organizations to do what we call Mogli Pay, which is basically a text to pay application where they text in a certain keyword to a phone number, and that converts over to a donation to that organization. And then we have an integration and capability using WhatsApp to expand to an international audience as well. Some of the clients that we like to showcase, Salesforce. They're a little bitty client of ours. They came on board a few years ago and started using Mogli for some voting and some polling of things. The other thing that you probably notice about these logos, there's a lot of nonprofits and there's a lot of higher education. That's about 60% of our business right now, where we see a lot of our clients come in. And that kind of goes back to where Mogli got started, helping a nonprofit organization. So that's still always kind of been a big focus of ours, is to help those organizations, nonprofits, higher ed, the social impact kind of organizations as well. But you do see some other organizations in there as well that are commercial organizations. Lately, we've seen a pretty good uptick in new clients coming on board in financial services or in legal services as well. A little bit of our brag slide, I guess you could call this. We tend to win demo jams whenever we participate in them. We claim to be the reigning Dreamforce demo jam champion at the moment, since there really hasn't been a traditional Dreamforce in a few years. And we won the Dreamforce Mega Demo Jam in 2019. For those of you who haven't yet actually seen a Mogli demo jam, just find it out on YouTube. There's a few different versions of it out there, but the woman here down in the lower right corner in the gold cap, she is Mal. She's our VP of Client Services, and she was a professional singer before joining the tech world and coming to Mogli. So we have been rapping our demo jams while Rob, the guy with the headphones here, has been moving the data around and showing what Mal has been rapping to. Really fun, really engaging, but it certainly it shows off what Mogli can do in a really cool way. So, and that's it for my slides. So we'll dive into taking a look at what Mogli really is all about now. Oh, and you know what? I didn't log into my Salesforce demo org. Minor detail. Now you know now you realize it's a live demo, right?
Or this could just be a recording of you logging into your demo org.
Well, there you go. That's true. All right. So now that that's there, okay, so on the left-hand half of my screen, or 2/3 of my screen, you see Salesforce, and I'm sitting on a contact record. Let's get rid of my notification there. On the other half of the screen, or third, what you see here is just Google Voice, and that has nothing to do with Mogli. It's just there to demonstrate text messages going back and forth. And so we'll start here on the contact record, and a couple things that I want to point out. The section here in this black and red, that's the Mogli widget, where you can see the most recent 300 pieces of the conversation, inbound, outbound, you see it all. And what you can see here, the inbound coming from the person you're texting with is the black background and the white text. The outbound is the red black background with the white text. You have the ability in here to customize those colors. So if you have multiple people at your organization maintaining text conversations with the same accounts, the same contacts, you can configure that any way you want. You can change their color of the bubble. You can change the color of their text, so that by looking simply at the color scheme that's on here, you're going to know whether it was Brian texting someone or Jen, perhaps. The key field that we really need to hone in on is this mobile number. Obviously, you can't have a text conversation with anybody if you don't have their mobile number. So that's the starting point in Mogli. And what actually happens when you put that in, once Mogli's installed, it takes the mobile number, removes the punctuations. There's a flow that runs behind the scenes for that, and fills out this field called Mogli number, and the Mogli number becomes the key field that we track everything based on, so that you know who you're talking to with your text conversations. Normally this field's hidden on the page layouts and you don't see it, but it's here just for demonstration purposes. And then the other piece that's really important that I mentioned just briefly early on is you have to get their permission to text them before you can have a text message conversation with them. There's laws about that, just like email and spam. And no, it's not okay to send someone a text message that says, is it okay if I text you? That's wrong. So you got to get them to text you first, or you have to send them an email that says, if you'd like us to text you, send this particular keyword to this number. And then what we normally recommend is that your very first message back to them is a confirmation of that. Do you agree to receiving 3 to 5 text messages from us every month? Reply with yes or no. If they reply with yes, you've got double opt-in, so you're good to go. If they reply with no, then unsubscribe, let them go. Now, that's not the only way to get an unsubscribe, by them texting in the keyword no. We have this little checkbox here called Mogli opt out, that if we check it and we save it, what you're going to see on the conversation side of your screen here is all of a sudden this is grayed out. I can't have a conversation with this person, not even by accident. So we protect that. So once you get the opt out, you can't accidentally mess it up. It's going to be hard to do a demo with that opted out. So we're going to opt back in so I can show the functions of this and show you what's going on. So the key things on the Mogli widget here is what you want to send, this message box, and you can just simply type in whatever you want, freeform text, and hit send. And if the Google Voice gods are moving pretty quickly today, we'll hopefully see that pop up over here any second now. Maybe, maybe not. That seems to be the part where these demos always slows down, and I tend to just start moving on and all of a sudden it shows up. So we'll do that. There are a few other things to point out about what you can do within Mogli. You can use templates like an email confirmation template here, where you now can see merge fields coming from your Salesforce org. So when we choose to send this email out or this text message out, it's not going to send a text to someone that says, hi, first name, is your email still email? Of course, it's going to send out, hi, Eric, is your email still eric@mogli.com? Oh, look, there's the hello. It did come in down there. I'm going to shrink this window just a little more. There. So hopefully what we'll see then, we'll see this conversation pop up back up on the Google Voice side. There it is. And what some of the other things that you can do with Mogli, you can schedule these text messages out, pick a day, pick a time. You don't have to sit there and send them automatically. You can pre-schedule, send them manually. You can pre-schedule as many of these as you want to go out at whatever time's appropriate for whatever you're trying to do. Keeping in mind, where you're sending it, you may not want to send someone a text message at 3 o'clock in the morning. They might enjoy that. They might be sleeping. Then you also have the ability to send images, pictures, small PDF files, for example. You can send those through an MMS message as well. So from the perspective of the billing aspect of what this costs as a client of Mogli, each text message, we bill in what's called message segments. So 160 characters is a message segment, and that's basically a texting industry standard. So text messages can go longer than that and still be delivered by your carrier as one message. But from the Mogli perspective, if you hit 162 characters, for example, that's 2 message segments, and you'll get billed for 2 segments. So what happens if you have sent somebody a text message and you're off somewhere else building a report or building a dashboard, and suddenly Eric over here says, oh, hi, I see, I got a text message. Yes, that's my email. I'm going to respond finally. So now we're back here working, building a dashboard, whatever we're doing somewhere, and oh, hey, did you hear that chime? Was I the only one that heard that, or did that come through to you as well? You didn't hear it? Okay, well then that's a sharing thing I screwed up with the demo here. When a text message comes into Mogli that's from someone that you have had a conversation with, there's an audible chime, which unfortunately you didn't hear, but you also see the notifications box down here in the lower left corner blinking. That's another way to let you know somebody that you've got a conversation going on with has responded. So you could try to figure out who it was by clicking contacts, looking through your messages again, or you can just click on this notification box and there's their response. You click on that and boom, you're right back where you were when you sent them the message. Easy peasy, right? So that's the good stuff. That's the basics of a one-on-one conversation, just the quick things I wanted to show you. The other piece of this that is kind of fun to show is really the automated conversation piece. And for that, we're going to start as the person texting in, and we're going to say, we have had a conversation with them, we've sent them an email, or we're at an event somewhere and we've said, hey, if you want to know more information about Mogli University, text the word student to this phone number. So Eric here is going to text in the word student. And what we're going to see on the Mogli side here is we see the student coming in. We also see the response. Thanks for your interest in Mogli U. Are you ready to start your survey? Yes or no? Well, not everybody follows directions, right? Brian, you're probably sitting there thinking, I don't want to say yes, because that's not the words I normally say. I normally give a thumbs up, or I normally do a smiley face, or maybe I just want to say yeah, or yep, instead of yes. And we see this a lot in the college student environment where they don't speak standard English. Maybe that's the word I'm trying to find, but we'll just respond back with yep, and we'll see what the text messaging app here does for us. And the reason I'm doing this is on purpose. It's going to respond as if they said yes. And there's functionality built into Mogli through a custom object where you can build out all of those various options that you want to make valid options for the responses to these questions. So if you, for whatever reason, wanted to make banana a valid option for someone to say yes, go at it, have at it. You can let them text the word banana in and it'll still send them down the yes path. It's the same with the negative, with the no path. You can do thumbs down, you can do whatever you want, that can be in there. So this conversation followed the yes path. Great, what grade are you in? Well, here's another option. Maybe they're a high school senior. Maybe they think they're in 12th grade. Maybe they type the number 12. Maybe they want to type out the word 12. All of those things would be acceptable to Mogli and send them down the same I'm a senior path. So we'll say 12 for the grade. And again, you'll see the response back. It'll say something like great seniors rule or something along those lines. And then it's going to ask what's your grade point average. And you notice it says 0.0 to 4.0. So if you wanted to actually type in 3.5, you can. In this case, if you wanted to type in banana, it's not going to accept it. I don't think we've actually set that up as a valid response. And then we'll see what Mogli does in here when we type in something that's not a valid response. Sooner or later, there we go. It's going to come back and say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Here's the valid options, try again. Of course, we're still waiting for that to show up on the Google Voice side. And we're going to prep our answer. Whoops. There we go. We're going to claim to be a 4.0 student because, well, I was in high school. We just won't talk about that in college. It wasn't quite that great. I had too much fun in college. So anyway, the conversation continues. Great. Congrats on making honor roll. How likely are you to attend Mogli University? Put that in as on a scale of 1 to 5. And then here's where this can get fun. From the Mogli side of things, you can build processes behind the scenes that will do certain things based upon these responses. So if a student texts in a 5, they're interested in wanting to attend your school, that's great. You can send them down a specific path. You can have a guidance counselor or an admissions counselor contact them directly, whatever you want to do. If they choose a 1 and they're not very interested, you can send them down a different path. that may have someone contact them to try to find out why they're not interested. Is there a specific program that school does not offer that maybe they wanted? Those kinds of things. And that's all, those are all things that can be done native to Salesforce. Now, see, now it's demonstrating something else that you can't hear, probably, because you're not hearing a phone ringing, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So we'll skip that. This funky little thing you see here in the red box where it says Mogli voice, we have the ability to respond to text messages with a phone call. And it can be a pre-recorded message that you can either just type in what you want it to say, and Mogli voice will come in and will say that message for you. We have male voices, we have female voices. I believe we have the ability to change the accent on those voices, or you can actually record the message yourself. And that would be an MP3 file that you upload into Mogli, and it would play your own voice saying whatever message you wanted to say. And I guess that's about it from the Mogli side of this demo. We'll move on. Anybody have questions about Mogli at the moment before we push forward?
I'm just a little curious about the security on the text messages for the contact. Is that if you can see the contact, you can see all the messages, or are you able to restrict seeing messages from a group? For example, in a higher ed environment, you might have a group of counselors that want to text a student, but they don't want their text messages to be public. Is that configurable, or how does that work?
Yeah, so basically the text messages are all stored in Salesforce in a custom object. So anything you can do with security and access settings with any custom object within Salesforce would still apply. So you have complete control over that through your own configuration settings. Inherently, text messaging isn't necessarily secure outside of Salesforce, but that's the nature of the text messaging business, and there's not anything we can do, unfortunately, to change that piece of it. From a pricing standpoint, Mogli actually offers unlimited users. So even if you have 5 users that are going to need it, or 500, the pricing is the same on a per monthly basis. We have 4 different packages that you see here that basically offer different levels of functionality, different features added in, and starting points at a certain number of messages per year. We also don't charge for inbound messages. It's only for outbound messages where you see the per message charge that comes in. And that the per message charges are based on the carriers as well. And that generally ranges anywhere from about 1/3 of a cent to 1.50 cents, depending on who it is, where they're going, and things of that nature. So that's the
Aubrey,
basics there.
Did you have a question, Aubrey? I saw that you unmuted earlier. And
yeah, it was kind of along the lines of Scott's question. As somebody who has worked in higher ed, there's a law called FERPA, which is the law that protects your data. Do you have any guidelines for users when they install this about what kinds of things they should and shouldn't use it for, or do you just let them do what they're going to do?
That's a great question, and there, I mean, even outside of the higher education world, there are things you cannot text and have those conversations with. It's funny, we were actually just talking about that in one of our sales calls recently, because one of our clients had gotten some of their messages marked as spam because of the wording they were using in their text messages. They're in the financial services industry, and their wording made it sound like they were a third-party servicer of loans rather than an originator of loans. And that's one of those areas where you can't do that. You can't be a third-party servicer. You have to be the loan originator. It's some of those laws are interesting to see what you can and can't do. But we don't have anything built into Mogli that prevents that. So really, that's upon you and the users to make sure that you're following the proper guidelines for what your industry allows on that. So that would be an interesting one if we could figure out a way to do that to prevent the text from even being sent. Because once you get flagged by a carrier as sending spam, it's pretty difficult to get unflagged, and then messages just don't get delivered. So
yeah, it's interesting. Well, I'm thinking about conversations that maybe evolve into those kinds of protected categories, like if an academic counselor is texting with a student and then gets more detailed information about the student and their performance that moves into protected information.
yeah, definitely. And I know in situations like that, we tend to recommend that you simply use text messaging to start the conversation, to understand what it is the students want to talk about, and then perhaps use it to schedule a meeting, and move over to an in-person meeting or a Zoom call or something else, rather than just continue it through text.
Good stuff. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thanks. Any others, or shall we move on? I'm not looking at chat, so Jen, if anybody threw something in chat, just let me know.
Thanks. I will definitely speak up if anyone uses the chat for questions. So if you are
Cool.
feeling shy, feel free. I'll continue monitoring that.
Sounds good. Well, I will move on then. And we'll get to talking about business analysis and what that is and why that's important. We'll skip a little bit about me because I already kind of covered that one. So here's our shameless plug. Here's the agenda for this portion of the meeting. We'll kind of talk through what a business analyst is, the various types of business analysis and what a business analyst does, and some of the processes that they may utilize. And of course, then questions, of course, if there are any later on. But first, the shameless plug that I promised Brian was in here. Midwest Raymond, July 20th through 22nd in Minneapolis. I believe this is the 8th year of Midwest Raymond coming up in this summer. It would have been, I guess this would have been year 10 if COVID wasn't around, which would have been a cool milestone. It's our first year in Minneapolis. We've been in Chicago from 2014 through 2019, and had anywhere between 500 and 900 people attending each year. Our Midwest Raymond got started in 2011 in Louisville, Kentucky. And to be perfectly honest, it was me being selfish. I couldn't attend Dreamforce that year, so I wanted to bring Dreamforce to me and created Midwest Raymond to make that happen. Ran it all by myself that first year and quickly realized that's the wrong way to do it. If you want to be able to enjoy the event at all, you need a team. So anyway, coming up this year or this summer in Minneapolis, today is actually the deadline to submit a speaking session. If you want to potentially speak at Midwest Raymond, you've got just a couple hours left to get that session in. But we anticipate around 40 to 45 breakout sessions this year. We've got 2 keynote speakers already lined up, Peter Coffey and Jillian Bruce, working on a 3rd one at the moment. And of course, we'll have a partner expo hall with somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 or 35 partners in the expo hall as well. And there'll be other stuff going on besides all that. So if you're interested, midwestraymond.com gets you where you need to go, and hopefully we'll see you there. So let's talk about a business analyst. What is it? What do they do, right? So if you think about it, the business analyst is kind of that person that dives into what your organization needs or is currently doing, or if they're if you're working for a consulting company, even they may have people who are business analysts and have that title, and their responsibility would be perhaps requirements gathering from the clients. So they ask all the questions of where, what, when, why, and how, those kinds of things. What drives your business? What's important to you? Where's your business want to go in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What are some of the conditions that your business operates in? And even perhaps what are some of the competitors in your industry doing that are going to impact the things that you do as a company? And all of those things kind of point to business analysis as more than just technology. It really looks more at the organization's business model, their process, how they sell, how they go to market, how they interact with their clients. Technology is a piece of that, of course, but some of that may be outside of technology. So when I think about a business analyst, I tend to think about that as that person as being someone who dives deep into an organization and understands what they're trying to do and how they're doing it today, and then tries to figure out ways for them to do it better tomorrow, and with Salesforce, of course, or whatever system they're getting ready to implement. Some people call them change makers or change enablement people. Some people might call them trailblazers as well, to use the Salesforce language. Salesforce administrators certainly do business analysis work. Sometimes that's one of the hats they always wear. If they may not be fortunate enough to work at an organization that has a dedicated business analyst. The term business analyst has probably really only been around, I don't know, 25, 30 years. So if you think back to what people did back then that were functioning as a business analyst, their job titles might have been things like accountant or accounting analyst or management consultant, for example. And as long as their titles may not have truly matched with what they were doing, but that's the way the organizations thought back then. So from the perspective of various types of business analysis, there's 3 or 4 different ways to look at it. The systems approach, what systems do you have in place today? What are you looking at implementing tomorrow? And what are the various rules and requirements for implementing those systems that your business needs to consider as far as how to move your business forward, how to keep your processes moving. Then there's another method that kind of looks more at what is it that you do? What are you selling? If you're selling something, what's your mission? And how can technology and systems and processes and procedures support all of those things? And then really all of that hopefully ties into a longer range, more strategic plan where your company's looking out 5, 10, 15, 20 years into the future with an eye on where are we today? Where do we want to be out in the future, and what do we need to do to get there in some semblance of an organized fashion? Some of the ways that people can do business analysis work, job shadowing is one that I have done many times way back in the day, where you simply sit with people and you watch them do their job and you ask a lot of questions. Why are you filling out this form? Where's the data go? What happens to that data after you put it into this particular application? Going through functional sessions with stakeholders to understand what they do, what their strategies are, and building out flowcharts on the wall, for example, as far as what the processes look like, how do they interconnect, how does changing one piece of data way over here impact everything over here, what's the ripple effect of that on a decision-making process. Obviously, systems plays a big role in it more today than it used to. And then the one thing that I always like to bring up is when someone asks you to do something, don't just say yes. Ask why. Get to the reasoning behind it. I see Brian shaking his head. I know you're very familiar with this one. You need to understand what that checkbox is going to do for them, for example. Why do they need it? What decision-making process is it going to support? Are they even going to use it? I mean, is it just because they want to gather that information? What are they going to do with it? That the why behind it is really more important from a business analysis perspective of what's this data going to support? Is it supporting another process? Is it supporting decision making? Is it going to be valuable to the organization to understand whatever that is about your clients, your customers, your constituents? So don't be that yes person who says, yes, I can do that for you. Learn why. There's a couple different techniques of business analysis that are pretty popular out there. This one that I've got on the screen right now is called the SWAT technique, where it's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So the strengths, obviously, the things that you and your organization currently do well, the things that separate you from your competitors. Why is Mogli a better SMS app than one of the competitors, for example? What do we do that they don't? And obviously weaknesses, that's the opposite of that. What do we need to do better? Everybody needs to be aware of their weaknesses, and that's everybody individually and organizationally as well. What are some of the limitations that your organization may have, perhaps that are preventing you from doing things? Maybe you want to build a lot more features into your own product, but you don't have the manpower. So a resource, human capital is a resource that's limited. So what are your opportunities, and what do you look for when you're going further down the line? How do you get ahead of your competitors? How large is the market that you're playing? And those are some of the things that you should consider as an opportunity, so you understand what's your goal, where do you want to go, and how big could you potentially get from doing all these things. And then threats are the things that you usually don't have control over, your competitors and what they're doing, new competitors coming into the industry, changes in the regulatory environment that the government or some other regulatory agency is doing that may impact how your business operates. And then, of course, you know, anything that's comes out in the press that's potentially negative about your industry, about your company, or just changes in your customer's attitude. How do they feel about what you're doing? Maybe you had a bad experience with one of your customers where things didn't get resolved the way they liked it, and they went social and got really loud about it. That could potentially derail a few other customers and cause some grief for you as well. There's another technique out there called the MOST analysis, which is more mission driven. The M actually stands for mission. What's your organization's purpose? It's mission, objectives, strategies, and tactics. So it kind of takes you through what's your purpose, why are you doing what you're doing, what are you trying to help, who are you trying to help, what can you do to get there, the strategies and the tactics, what can you put into place to make all of those things happen. You can still kind of think of it as asking the same questions that we just briefly talked about, but with just a slightly different shift in your mindset, looking at more, how can you examine strategy and strategic planning. This kind of takes that slightly more long range approach to all of those questions. And then the one that I always enjoy talking about is what's called the Pest analysis. And I just simply think this is hilarious because Pest, the P stands for political, and most of us don't enjoy political conversations. But you know, as a business and in today's environment, certainly more so today than in other times, it seems like political action is certainly a big deal and can impact a lot of things. Way more than what we normally want it to, probably. So PEST stands for political, economic, social, and technological, and those are the big categories of consideration while you're going through this business analysis process. You can see on the screen a whole bunch of examples of all of those, and I'm not going to read through those, but it's all out there. You know, it's some of the things that some of us might even consider common sense today. Just based on how we are and what we currently do. But anyway, the one technique that I feel like still a lot of people use and a lot of organizations use is just the basic brainstorming, the crowdsourcing. Let's gather everybody who's important to this project into a room and start talking about it and see what ideas flow out of it. Use a whiteboard, put the Post-it notes up on the wall. I remember doing this once at an organization several years ago, and we had the big easel with the like 24-inch by 36-inch kind of Post-it notes, and they were lining the walls around this whole conference room. Every once in a while, somebody peel one off and move it to a different place, because as the discussion progressed, we figured that it really related more to something we talked about over here. So we tried to group all of these things together into like pieces of the conversation to make more sense than just a bunch of Post-its on the wall. But you know, all of that stuff is kind of what business analysis is all about. It's a creative way to look at problems and to do problem solving in a very simple nutshell. And that's all I've got, really. I'll share this deck with you so you can share it in the group. There's several different books that I've listed here as resources. There's a couple of trails on Trailhead as well that I mentioned that talk through business analysis as well. And safe harbor, I believe there's a business analyst certification in the works with Salesforce that's probably going to be coming out in another year or two. I've heard some rumblings about that. So for those of you that are doing business analysis work or are interested in it, at some point there will hopefully be a certification from Salesforce on that too. So, and that's it. Anybody have questions, comments? Anybody
Eric,
want to
question.
talk about?
Eric.
Yeah.
So you kind of made a mention, like, don't just say yes, right? In reference to the wonderful checkbox.
Right.
If you're historically been working in an environment where the expectation is the answer is yes, how would you recommend someone try to make the move to get to the underlying why? Because you know they're not going to be able to just say no.
True. Good point, Brian. Yeah, that is the challenge. Yeah, but yeah, you know, I think if you take a step back from that first, and while that request has come up, and you simply ask the person, what's this going to support? What's the decision-making process, or what's it going to do for new sales or new business, or how's that going to help a client of ours, for example? That may cause them to sit back for a second and think about it and wonder, am I making the right decision by saying I need this hypothetical checkbox or whatever this is. But you know, that I think that is part of the challenge of not just being a business analyst, but Salesforce administrators see that all the time too. People come to them with all these crazy requests. Can you just take this Excel spreadsheet and dump it into Salesforce? Sure, you can, right? But should you, right? There's the question. What's it going to do? What problems will it cause? Are you going to get more duplicate data than you really know what to do with? So there are a lot of behind the scenes kind of thoughts and questions that you need to have flowing in your mind and be able to bring up to whoever is having that conversation with you, just to get them thinking about it as well.
I think it's important to ask them too, and to think about the output of the thing that they're asking for. They really need a multi-select pick list. They call it that. That's what they want. They're determined. And then you say, well, what kind of reporting would you like with this particular solution? And kind of showing them or walking through the process that, hey, maybe that's not the best selection if you actually want to do any kind of meaningful reporting that you will need in the future.
Yep, that's a great example, Jen.
I think there's a lot, I kind of posted in the chat. There's so much overlap, and I say this all the time to anyone that'll listen to me. Salesforce admins wear a lot of hats. In my company, we don't have a business analyst to help us with some of these things. We're doing it on our own. And a lot of what you were talking about really resonated with me on, asking the whys and kind of digging in and pushing a little bit further on what they're trying to actually accomplish. So I think that there's so much of it that we do as Salesforce admins. Not only are we doing the business analyst side of things, but we're also building relationships with people, and then we're the trainers, and we're the developers, and we're all the things. So it's a really important skill set to have as part of our career.
Yep, absolutely. And there are some people who feel like that's the part that's harder to train. The softer skills are harder to train into someone than the technical skills. And maybe that's true. Maybe that's your opinion as well, that's just comes from a personality trait more than anything, perhaps. But I think it's important, regardless of whether it's trainable or not. I think the having that mindset and being able to relate to people and have those sometimes difficult conversations is really important for the organizations that you're working with or working for, because it helps build better processes, helps things become more efficient, and helps the organization grow.
I think that's a really good question. I want to kind of ask this team, this group, what do you guys think? Is this skill set trainable? And if so, how do you help skill up somebody on being a BA?
Practice. Shadowing. I mean, the first time I became a hiring manager, it was to hire a dedicated BA person. And I think we spent the first 3 months with me going with him to every single meeting, and starting with me leading the meeting, and then moving it to him leading the meeting, and to the point where I just then never showed up. Right? It's because I believe everyone can do business analysis. Whether they can do it like great and wonderful, and whether they like it is a completely different thing. But all of us can learn good BA skills. And it's just a matter of training our brains to think and respond a certain way. Like the hardest part of doing BA isn't the actual coming up with the requirements. It's not finding out what the problem is. It's actually the interpersonal working with the people who want the stuff, and how do you build a relationship so they understand that you're all on the same team. You're not just asking these questions to be a pain in the back. You legitimately want to try to find the best solution to whatever challenge they're trying to surmount. That's the biggest challenge, and that's, I think, what takes practice.
Said Brian. I like that.
I'd add in there, hey Eric, how's it going, by the way? I'd add in there that confidence is something that's really important to have. I've worked with a lot of, those internal accidental admins as a consultant, and the only thing that's stopping them from taking off and becoming what a lot of these great and smart people are on this call is they didn't believe that they were smart enough to stand up in a meeting and say to C-level executives that they're doing something wrong.
They're not doing it wrong. There's a more ideal way and efficient way to do it.
More ideal. Okay. Yeah. I know my words come with an edge sometimes, and maybe that's the difference there. But
you're too confident, John.
And that's why you don't talk to the C-suite anymore.
I've been locked out of those meetings before. Yes.
But that makes a lot of sense, though, what you're saying with the confidence.
Yeah, and that is definitely a risk. I mean, depending on who you're talking to be misinterpreted, perhaps. I mean, way back in my earlier days in my career, long before Salesforce, I was in a meeting with senior leaders of this organization, basically presenting to them about the first 9 months of work that I had done for this organization. And it was to turn in some paperwork to the government for $10 million in funding. And the president of the company reviewed all of this while we were in this meeting. We were talking through why I did what I did and how I felt like it was proper and all that. And he kind of looked at me and he said, "I'm sorry, Eric, you didn't do that right." And it's like, okay, what do you mean? Coincidentally, his name was John. What do you mean, John? And so he explained what he felt was the right way to do it. And I was like, okay, I can see that. I can understand why you want it done like that. But then the killer piece of that whole conversation was his response to that also included, "It'd be really great if you could have this done in 3 weeks." And, I started this off with, that was the first 9 months of my job there was getting to that point. And at that point, I probably chose my words a little poorly and just reacted. And rather than telling him, "I think 3 weeks is a little too short, I probably need a little more time," I think I said something along the lines of, "That's unrealistic. I'm going to need 3 months." And what ultimately happened with that particular organization was 6 weeks later, I was gone. He didn't really like my reaction and me challenging him on that. So he basically wanted me gone, which I knew after the fact, some from the person who was truly my manager at that company. He basically told me, nobody ever challenged the president of the company like that before, and he didn't know how to react. So they basically terminated my employment under the guise of the company merging with another one and some job shifting taking place. But whatever, it was a learning experience for me, that's for sure. So choose your words carefully, I think, is the moral of this whole story, because you never know how somebody else will react to what you say.
Yeah, I suppose you do need to watch out for that. But honestly, at a certain point, I would realize I wouldn't want to be working for those people if they can't act like adults. Then why work for them?
Yep.
So
I think that is a really good point. And one of my add-on to that would be you need to have a company culture that promotes these kinds of conversations where you can walk into a room, you know, you're the expert in your little, as I call it, my little petty kingdom. And I can say, hey, you know, that multi-select pick list is going to have some really negative downstream implications. Let's look at this instead, and feel empowered to say that, and not just empowered to say that, but that the powers that be want to hear that feedback because they trust my expertise in my domain.
I think it's hard to build that trust sometimes, like especially coming into a new company or something like that. Like there is some things that you have to do to try to start to build that trust very quickly. I will just speak up for myself that even though I know members of my team are on this call as well, but I'm sure that you guys will agree that I feel like we do foster that type of relationship where if you guys came to me or we went to our manager to say, hey, that timeline is not realistic, take a hike, like we'd be pretty comfortable saying that in a more kind of relaxed environment, and that type of trust is very welcome, and we're very fortunate for that. I think just because someone does do some things differently, like you were saying, Eric, that someone might have taken a different approach, doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong either, right? Like it can, the end result might still be the same. And I think that that's important too, to recognize that other people take different paths, but ultimately they can get to the same endpoint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's a big thing in this ecosystem, that there are certainly multiple ways to solution a single problem.
I think having those conversations though, and I know for me, I can talk about all the different ways to feed a cat and maybe talk myself in circles before I'm actually landing on a decision, or I need to think about it for a day or two and then come to a decision for it as well. I'm curious about what, we talked about, wanting to kind of push back on some requirements, get some business analysis done. I'm curious if there's any advice on what your approach would be if there was maybe some friction to wanting to dig deeper, maybe some friction to wanting to do some more of that business analysis before you just start building, and how you might handle someone kind of giving you some blockers on you being able to do the deep dive and the decision and the discovery portion in order to come up with a next steps.
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly a very important topic and conversation that needs to take place. Because most times organizations have a very finite timeline in mind for specific projects and things to be done and to be implemented. And in a lot of cases, that's their goal, is I got to get it done. I got to stay in my lane. I got to meet that goal. I got to make sure this happens by a certain time. And there may be valid reasons for that, of course, in a lot of cases. And the hard part, Jen, as you were just describing, was how do you keep them on track while derailing them just a little bit by changing the tone of the conversation a little bit into what if we consider this alternative, what's it going to do? And I think that kind of goes back to some of the earlier conversations we've already had, where it needs to be focused or phrased in a here's another alternative that I think we should consider because of whatever. Because multi-select pick lists are bad, just to pick on that example one more time, or whatever it is. I mean, you can have, everybody's got their own opinions of all these things, and there can certainly be room for discussion around all sorts of different topics and various ways of doing things. And I think ultimately for the organization to get the best solution for what they need, various alternatives need to be discussed. And if potentially that may slow down a piece of something at one point in the process, the upside to that is it may speed up something else later on. And ultimately the goal is still going to get met.
Anyone else? Anyone want to ask Eric about Midwest streaming or baking? He's also experts on both those topics.
Do you know how many submissions you've gotten so far for speakers this year?
Oh, goodness. I haven't seen the most recent numbers, but I know as of about 4 days ago, we were closing in on 200.
Wow.
Which is pretty good. I mean, for roughly 40 or 45 sessions, that's a lot. And that's probably pretty close to the average that we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years of Midwest Stream. And we tend to get somewhere in the 3 to 5 times the number of sessions for number of submissions. So the committee that votes on them certainly has their work cut out for them coming up in the next week or two. And I do not vote on sessions. I pulled myself out of that one a few years ago because people are coming to me prior to the session date, the submission date closing, and saying, "Hey, I want to submit a talk to Midwest Stream, and what do you think about this idea? Or can you review my session and give me some thoughts on it?" Personally, I've managed to be a Dreamforce speaker at Dreamforce, I think 7 different years. With I think somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 or 20 sessions across those years. And I've spoken at several other community-led events. So I feel like I have a pretty good track record of submitting sessions and getting them accepted. So I kind of know what event organizers look for in sessions. And I've kind of felt like that helping other people get their session submissions to the point where they might get accepted is a better value or a better use of my time, or a better way for me to support the community than just simply reading a bunch of submissions and giving them a 1 to 5 ranking.
Mm-hmm.
So, but hopefully by the end of this month, I think that's our plan, is to announce who's speaking at the event and get all that wrapped up in the next couple of weeks. Because that's a big driver, I think, for people deciding to attend, is what are the sessions going to be and who's speaking.
Right. The value they're going to get out of going. There's so many events happening. Some people have to be selective with what they're attending, but
absolutely,
Midwest Streaming is typically one that I'm attending. I'm not sure if it's in the cards for me this year, but it's definitely encouraged that everyone check it out. There's some great sessions from beginners to advanced admins and everything in between, developers and everything. So it's usually a pretty good mix.
I mean, the last time I was there, I think I attended only one session.
It was mine though, right, Brian?
I honestly don't remember what the session was, so I hope
it wasn't mine.
Yours. But I spent the entire time in the room where they have the booths and they have folks from Salesforce, and I spent the entire time networking, because it tends to be a majority of the people who are living in, the immediate regional area statewise, and the contacts you can get just from that are amazing.
Yep. I feel like that's the biggest value in any of those community-led events, is the networking opportunities and the ability to meet additional people and potentially learn about solutions you didn't know existed from the partners that are sponsoring the events too.
Is Mogli sponsoring, Eric?
Well, yes, of course. Mogli is sponsoring. Mogli is sponsoring a lot of the community-led events this year, which means you're probably going to see me at a lot of the community events this year as part of my function with the company. So, yep.
Well, that's great. We look forward to seeing that announcement with the speakers, and I'm sure it'll be a very successful event.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to come talk with y'all. And if you have any questions further down the line, just feel free to hit me up. I'm happy to answer.
So we have 15 minutes left for the scheduled time. So at this point, I'd like to open up for basically the homebrewed circles of success. So if anyone has something that maybe they're struggling on or a question, feel free to bring it up now in the remaining time. And if no one has anyone, we will end early. Everyone's doing 100% perfectly. No one's got questions.
You know, I don't know if Rebecca is on. I'm going to call her out for just a second because she had a really good question. I think she posted on their community page the other day, and I was thinking about this, and I was like, there's got to be a better way.
No.
You had to call me out, didn't you?
I did.
You
It was
had
a
to
really
call
good
me out.
question. And I've run into this myself. So Rebecca, I'm so glad that you're here. Do you want to share what your question was?
Sure. So I basically asked everybody out in the communities that our inside sales team had a report that the manager sent out and wanted to basically know if his team members and his regional members subscribed to it. And I was like, I can't tell, and if I can, I'm not sure. So I wanted to just double check to make sure I had my bases covered. And thank you to Brian that he responded back to me yesterday quickly on it. And what I thought I thought I could see who subscribed to reports because I have a couple reports that I actually set up the subscribers to it rather than they go out to the report and click on the subscribe button. So my assumption was that, oh, I think I can. And sure enough, I can't. So I basically said to him, I said, unfortunately, I can't see it. So you kind of have to trust your team members that if they did subscribe to it or not. So yeah, I wish there was a way that you can see a way for a report for people to subscribe.
Yeah.
Here's the longer answer I did not provide you because I assumed it would just give everyone heartburn.
Yeah.
If you go into setup and you go to scheduled jobs,
yeah,
okay, you will see a list of things with the submitted by, the when they submitted it, the start date, the next scheduled run, and the type, and you'll see report notification all over the place. And those are subscriptions. So not scheduled reports like we did in Classic, but subscriptions.
Yeah.
But the problem is you can't see what the report is for that view.
Right.
The best thing you have is the job name. So
okay.
to get to that, you can then go to run a query against all the jobs, find with the job name, and you can back your way into it through a bunch of queries to get to it. You can't get to it through reporting. You have to go through the query language system. So you have to have something that either lets you query directly the tables through Sockwell.
Yeah.
Like Excel connector if you're using Excel, or Apex.
Okay.
Or Workbench, right?
Yeah.
But it is not a clear one-step type of thing because you could have 20 report notifications in there and they're all for the same report.
Right.
Or they could be for 20 different reports.
Sure.
And yeah, it's you basically have to look it up one way for another. I mean, if I had a customer tell me right now, I would tell them I could probably do it, but expect me to spend the entire day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
it seems like it.
It may actually be faster to log in as every single user
as
and
them.
look at that sketch or subscription.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's how many users do you have? I'm just curious that you'd have to log in as. Is it like 10?
No, I think it would be close to 25.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So not too bad,
terrible.
No.
I would
But
rather
like you said,
spend the
it's a
half
pain.
hour it would take me to do that than whatever Brian just said because I didn't understand what half
that'll
those
take
words
you
were.
a lot longer than a half hour.
Exactly.
Because you have to do the log in, the log out. You got a couple page loads. You got some documentation you're gonna have to put in.
Okay, maybe an hour then.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it'll change. He'll want to know next month.
This is, we've been talking about BA. This is kind of a nice thing because it's a change management government process, right? Someone is asking you to do something your time. And the question is the time required to do that ask a high enough priority considering everything else that you're being done for the organization? And so if you went back to whoever your boss is or first managing and said, yeah, to do this, I would need an hour and a half to do it. And that's an hour and a half I don't get to spend on. Is it worth me spending an hour and a half for you?
On something, yeah, definitely.
There is an idea, I just found it in the idea exchange, ability to report on who subscribes to reports. So I just dropped that in the link. I'll post it on that community post as well, just for people to reference. So if it's something that you're passionate about, I know I'm voting on it right now. Perhaps it can be something that Salesforce can look into and prioritize for us.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's already been out there since 2015.
So, I mean, guys,
Don't
it'll
kill my
eventually happen.
enthusiasm, Brian.
Yeah, it'll
I'm
eventually
not trying
happen.
to kill your enthusiasm. I'm setting.
You're trying to set some
expectation.
expectations. Basically, he's saying it's too old. It's not going to happen.
Yep, pretty much. It's gonna die.
But it is something too that like I like to point to. Like if I find something on the idea exchange like that, it's typically something
it's good to upvote it because eventually we might actually get a comment here from Salesforce. I mean, it's about the point where there's even someone from Salesforce that just says needed in the comments. The way Salesforce is going, I wouldn't be a bit surprised if what happens is that a different method comes out and they sunset subscriptions for something else, because that seems to be what's happening with features now. It's like some of the stuff that's been out there for years, instead of being updated, is being sunsetted and replaced.
Well, thanks for sharing, Rebecca. It's just I know I've been there. I've felt that pain.
Yeah, not a
and
problem.
it's good to talk about. So maybe we save someone else some time.
Anyone else you want to pick on, Jen?
No, but I love it when you guys post to our community these questions, because I always learn something or I'm reminded of something I forgot. So, if you have questions or think of something or are feeling shy, like please feel free to post and ask those questions on our Trailblazer community. And the other tip I have for you is checking out the groups within the community. So there's things like there is a report and dashboard group, and that might be a good place to ask some of these questions too. Other product groups out there on the Trailblazer community, that's where you're going to find product managers and other experts and other people that are passionate about what you're talking about. Not only posting it on our Madison group, but also in those groups, you're going to gain a lot more traction and a lot more visibility. And typically I post there before I post to or open a case with Salesforce, because I find that the community is going to answer me a lot faster. So just tips on where to go and where to find the experts.
Okay. Milwaukee's user group is April 12th. I don't know what the topic is yet. I'm not sure if it's been posted yet. So expect another Milwaukee, probably going to be virtual for April 12th. And then we will be aiming to do Madison again. What will be May 10th, I believe.
Yeah,
and
that's
I
right.
don't think we have a topic set yet.
We don't. So if you have something you're passionate about, you'd like to speak to the group for, please reach out to me or Brian. I know that's getting close to the release, I think. June 4th is what my release is. Usually it's the week after. We're on the early release cycle, but we're always happy to hear about other topics you're interested in. And I want to plug something for Brian, because he's so sneaky sometimes. He's not, but he recently did a live build with Orchestrator. So Salesforce Orchestrator, we got that, I think went GA the last release. And I just caught up on it last night. I was up late watching YouTube, And Brian, thank you for posting it. You did a really nice job and had some great tips on how it can be a little more dynamic. So if it's something that you're interested in, you want to get your feet wet yet with Orchestrator, check out Brian's recording. I can drop that in the link here too. Really good live build from Brian. Thanks, Brian.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, have a good month. Happy spring. 6 days early. But it's supposed to be like 50s and 60s all this week. So I expect everyone to be in shorts outside.
Thanks again, Eric. Thanks, everyone.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.